The air inside the ruined cathedral was thick with the scent of damp stone and ancient magic, the cracked stained glass windows casting fractured light over the shattered pews. Shadows pooled in the corners like living things, shifting uneasily as Jinwoo stepped forward, his boots crunching over debris. The Void Queen lounged atop the remnants of an altar, her obsidian throne woven from tendrils of darkness, her crimson eyes gleaming with amusement. "You're bold, little hunter," she purred, her voice echoing as if spoken from the depths of a chasm. "To seek me out alone, either very brave or very foolish." Jinwoo's grip tightened around the hilt of his dagger, his muscles coiled like a spring. He knew the risks. The Void Queen was no ordinary S-rank monster, she was a sovereign of the abyss, a being who had devoured entire guilds without breaking a sweat. But he had no choice. The system had given him a mission: make a deal or die. His stats flickered at the edge of his vision: strength, 187, agility, 210, stamina, 195, numbers that had once felt impossible, yet now seemed pitiful against her. She tilted her head, her inky hair cascading like a waterfall of night. "What could you possibly offer me?" A smirk played on her lips as shadows writhed around her fingers, forming jagged claws. Jinwoo exhaled slowly. "Information. The location of the Monarch's Gate." Her amusement vanished. The air itself seemed to shudder as her aura spiked, the pressure making the stone beneath Jinwoo's feet groan. "You lie." He didn't flinch. "I've seen it. And I can take you there." His heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. He needed her power, needed it to survive what was coming. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then, with a laugh like shattering glass, she rose from her throne. "Prove it." The attack came without warning. A whip of darkness lashed toward Jinwoo's throat, faster than sound. His instincts screamed, agility flared, and he twisted, the shadow missing by a hair's breadth. Stone exploded where it struck, dust filling the air. He didn't hesitate. Ruler's authority activated, and the debris froze midair before hurtling toward her like bullets. She flicked a hand. The projectiles disintegrated into smoke. "Cute." Jinwoo lunged, dagger gleaming with mana blade, a streak of blue cutting through the gloom. She parried with a clawed hand, the impact sending shockwaves through the cathedral. The force knocked him back, skidding across the floor, but he rolled into the motion, kicking off a pillar to rebound. Shadow exchanges form blurred as he swapped places with a lingering shade, reappearing behind her. His dagger plunged toward her spine. Her shadow moved without her. A tendril shot up, catching his wrist in a vice-like grip. Pain flared as bones creaked, but Jinwoo gritted his teeth. Bloodlust activated, his veins burning as his stats surged. With a roar, he wrenched free, flipping backward as her counterstrike gouged a trench in the ground where he'd stood. She eyed him, intrigued. "You're stronger than you look." Jinwoo wiped blood from his lip. "And you talk too much." The fight erupted in earnest. Shadows clashed like living beasts, the cathedral trembling under their blows. Jinwoo weaved through her attacks, predator's instinct guiding his movements, but every strike he landed felt futile, her flesh knitted itself back together faster than he could wound her. He needed an edge. Then he saw it, a flicker of hesitation when he feinted toward the altar. Her throne. It wasn't just decoration, it was her anchor. A gamble, but he had no other play. Gathering every ounce of mana, Jinwoo activated Dominator's Touch. The ground beneath her cracked as spectral hands erupted, seizing her limbs. For a split second, she was immobilized. He didn't waste it. Shadow Step carried him to the throne in a blink, his dagger plunging into its core. The Void Queen's scream shook the heavens. The throne shattered, and the shadows screamed with it. She staggered, her form flickering like a dying flame. Jinwoo braced, expecting retaliation. Instead, she laughed. "Well played, Hunter." Her voice was weaker now, but her grin was sharp. "Perhaps you are worth bargaining with." Jinwoo exhaled, his body aching. The fight had only begun, but so had the real game. The air inside the cavernous throne room was thick with the scent of ozone and something far older, the Void Queen's presence, a suffocating weight that pressed against Jinwoo's ribs. His shadow soldiers stood at the ready, their forms flickering like candle flames as the Queen's laughter echoed off the obsidian walls. "You've grown stronger, little hunter," she purred, her voice weaving through the darkness like a serpent. "But strength alone won't save you from what comes next." Before Jinwoo could respond, the ground beneath him trembled. A jagged crack split the floor, and from its depths surged a swarm of voidlings, twisted creatures with too many eyes and limbs that moved in unnatural jerks. But these weren't the mindless drones from before. They moved with purpose, flanking him in perfect formation. Someone's controlling them. His gaze snapped back to the queen, but her smirk told him everything. This was a distraction. Then he felt it, a surge of mana from behind. Jinwoo twisted just in time to see Beru, his most trusted shadow, lunging at him with claws outstretched. The ant's eyes, usually gleaming with loyalty, were now clouded with violet energy. The Void Queen's influence. Master. Forgive me, Beru rasped, his voice strained, even as his body moved against his will. Jinwoo barely dodged, rolling to the side as Beru's strike carved a trench into the stone where he'd stood. The betrayal stung worse than any physical wound. Damn it. He couldn't afford to hold back, not when every second wasted gave the queen more time to tighten her grip on his forces. With a mental command, he summoned Igris and Iron to intercept Beru, buying himself a moment to think. The Void Queen watched, amused, her fingers drumming against the armrest of her throne. You see now, don't you? This was never just about power. It's about control. She gestured, and the voidling surged again, this time splitting into two groups, one advancing on Jinwoo, the other peeling off toward the chamber's far wall, where a pulsating rift had begun to form. A gate. If she opened it fully, whatever waited on the other side would flood into the human world. Jinwoo gritted his teeth. He couldn't fight Beru, the voidlings, and stop the gate from opening, not alone. Then he heard it, the sharp crack of displaced air, followed by a familiar voice. Need a hand, kid? Thomas Andre materialized beside him, his massive frame crackling with energy. The scavenger guild leader had followed him, or maybe he'd been tracking the queen all along. Either way, Jinwoo didn't have time to question it. Thomas didn't wait for an answer. He barreled into the voidlings, his fists shattering their twisted bodies with each blow. Focus on the big ugly, he grunted, nodding toward the queen. I'll clean up the trash. Jinwoo didn't waste the opening. He dashed past the fray, his dagger flashing as he severed the tendrils of void energy connecting Beru to the queen's will. The ant staggered, his eyes clearing for a split second, just long enough for Jinwoo to seize control again. Snap out of it. He ordered, pouring his own mana into the bond between them. Beru shuddered, then let out a guttural roar as he wrenched free from the queen's influence. My king. I failed you. Save the apologies, Jinwoo snapped. We've got work to do. The queen's laughter had faded. Her fingers curled into fists as she rose from her throne, the air around her warping. You think reclaiming one puppet changes anything? She hissed. The rift behind her pulsed wider, and from its depths emerged a monstrous silhouette, a creature with too many mouths, each lined with rows of needle-like teeth. Jinwoo's stomach dropped. A void monarch. Thomas whistled. Well, that's new. Jinwoo didn't have time to panic. He signaled Beru and his shadows to flank the monarch while he charged the queen. The battle erupted into chaos, Thomas trading blows with the voidlings, Beru and Igris harrying the monarch, while Jinwoo and the queen clashed in a blur of steel and shadows. She was faster than he remembered. Her strikes left after images, her void magic dissolving his attacks before they could land. But Jinwoo had learned since their last fight. He feinted left, then pivoted, using his shadows to yank a chunk of the crumbling ceiling down onto her. The queen snarled as she dodged, but the distraction gave him an opening. His dagger grazed her arm, drawing the first drop of black blood. Her eyes widened in fury. You dare dash? Jinwoo didn't let her finish. He pressed the attack, his shadows surging to bind her limbs. But just as he thought he had her, the void monarch let out a deafening shriek. The sound ripped through the chamber, shattering stone and sending Thomas skidding back. Jinwoo risked a glance. Beru was pinned, the monarch's claws buried in his carapace. The queen smirked. Checkmate. Jinwoo's grip tightened on his dagger. Not yet. He still had one card left to play. With a mental command, he activated Dominator's Touch, channeling every ounce of his will into a single, desperate gamble. If this didn't work, they were all dead. The queen's smirk faltered as the shadows around her twisted, not obeying her, but him. What? Jinwoo didn't answer. He pulled. And the void screamed. The air in the throne room was thick with the scent of ozone and something darker, something ancient. Jinwoo stood before the Void Queen, her obsidian crown gleaming under the flickering light of the floating orbs that hovered like dying stars. Her smile was sharp, her eyes endless pits of hunger. You've come far, Shadow Monarch, she purred, her voice echoing as if spoken from the depths of a chasm. But even you must know, deals with the void come at a price. Jinwoo clenched his fists, shadows writhing at his feet like restless serpents. He had expected treachery, but the sheer weight of her presence pressed against his ribs, making each breath a struggle. I didn't come here to bargain for my life, he said, voice steady despite the storm inside him. I came to end yours. The Void Queen laughed, the sound like shattering glass. Bold words. But your army is broken, your allies scattered. What can one man do against the tide of nothingness? As if summoned by her taunt, the ground beneath Jinwoo trembled. From the cracks in the marble floor, tendrils of void energy erupted, lashing toward him. He dodged, rolling aside as the tendrils struck where he'd stood, leaving behind gaping holes in reality itself. His heart pounded. This wasn't just raw power. She was unraveling the very fabric of space. A sudden, searing pain lanced through his side. Jinwoo gasped, stumbling as a blade of pure darkness protruded from his ribs. Behind him, a figure materialized from the shadows, one of his own lieutenants, eyes hollow, movements puppet-like. No. The realization hit him like a physical blow. She had turned his shadows against him. The Void Queen's grin widened. Did you think your dominion over death made you untouchable? The void consumes all, even loyalty. Jinwoo gritted his teeth, yanking the blade free as his regeneration flared. Blood dripped onto the floor, sizzling against the cold stone. He had to think fast. If she could corrupt his shadows, brute force wouldn't work. He needed a new strategy. With a mental command, he recalled every remaining shadow soldier, pulling them back into himself. The Void Queen tilted her head, amused. Giving up so soon? Jinwoo didn't answer. Instead, he focused inward, channeling every ounce of his power into a single, desperate gamble. If she fed on the void, then he would give her nothing to consume. He would become the absence of absence itself. The air around him warped as his body dissolved into pure shadow, not attacking, but erasing. The throne room trembled, the Void Queen's smirk faltering for the first time. What are you? Then the world went silent. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No light, no sound, no void. Just emptiness. And then Jinwoo reformed, his fist buried in the Void Queen's chest. Her eyes widened, her form flickering like a dying flame. Impossible, she whispered. Jinwoo leaned in, his voice a cold promise. You forgot one thing. The Shadow Monarch doesn't just control death. His grip tightened. He is death. With a final surge of power, he unleashed a pulse of pure annihilation. The Void Queen screamed, a sound that shook the heavens, before her body shattered like glass, dissolving into motes of fading darkness. But as the echoes of her demise faded, Jinwoo collapsed to one knee, his vision swimming. The cost of his gambit was steep. His shadows were gone, his strength nearly depleted. And worse, the throne room's walls began to crumble, revealing an endless abyss beyond. The Void Queen had been a pawn. And the true enemy was waking up. The air crackled with tension as Jinwoo stood before the Void Queen, her obsidian armor gleaming under the eerie glow of the rift. His muscles burned from the relentless battles leading up to this moment, but his resolve was unshaken. She tilted her head, her crimson eyes studying him with a mix of amusement and disdain. You're persistent, human, she purred, her voice echoing like distant thunder. But persistence alone won't save you. Jinwoo clenched his fists, shadows writhing around him like living tendrils. We'll see about that. With a burst of speed, he lunged, his dagger aimed for her throat. The Void Queen barely flinched, flicking her wrist to summon a barrier of swirling darkness. The blade struck with a metallic clang, sending sparks flying, but failed to pierce through. Before Jinwoo could react, she countered with a backhanded strike, her gauntlet slamming into his ribs. The force sent him skidding across the jagged ground, his breath knocked from his lungs. Gritting his teeth, Jinwoo forced himself upright, his body already healing, thanks to his regeneration. He couldn't afford to hold back. With a mental command, his shadow soldiers emerged from the abyss, their forms twisting into existence. Flank her, he ordered. The shadows obeyed, darting in from all sides while Jinwoo charged again, this time channeling his mana into a devastating punch. The Void Queen smirked, her movements fluid as she dodged and weaved, dismantling his soldiers with precise strikes. But Jinwoo had anticipated this, his real attack came from above. A massive shadow hand erupted from the ground, seizing her ankle and yanking her off balance. Jinwoo capitalized, driving his knee into her stomach before following up with a spinning kick to her jaw. The impact sent her crashing into a pillar of black stone, cracks spider webbing through its surface. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, laughter. The Void Queen pushed herself up, wiping a trickle of dark blood from her lip. Not bad, she admitted. But let me show you what true power looks like. Her body erupted in an aura of violet energy, the ground trembling beneath her. Jinwoo's instinct screamed at him to move, and he barely rolled aside as a blast of void energy obliterated the spot where he'd stood. The battle had just escalated. She was faster now, her strikes leaving afterimages as she closed the distance in an instant. Jinwoo blocked a slash aimed for his neck, but the sheer force drove him to one knee. His arms shook under the pressure, his muscles screaming in protest. He couldn't match her raw strength, so he'd have to outthink her. With a grunt, he disengaged, summoning a dozen shadow clones to confuse her. The Void Queen scoffed, obliterating them with sweeping arcs of her scythe, but Jinwoo used the distraction to reposition. He activated Dominator's touch, his hand glowing with ominous power. The moment her back was turned, he struck, his palm connecting with her spine. The Void Queen gasped as her own energy flickered, her movement slowing. Jinwoo didn't let up, raining down a barrage of blows, each strike fueled by the stolen strength of his fallen enemies. She staggered, her armor cracking under the onslaught. But she wasn't done. With a roar, she unleashed a shockwave of pure void energy, forcing Jinwoo back. Her wounds began knitting themselves together, her aura flaring brighter than ever. "You're strong," she conceded, her voice dripping with venom. "But I am infinite." Jinwoo panted, his body pushed to its limits. He could feel his shadows weakening, his mana reserves dwindling. But surrender wasn't an option. He reached deep, tapping into the last vestiges of his power. The shadows around him writhed violently, coalescing into a monstrous form, a towering knight clad in darkness, its eyes burning with hellfire. The Void Queen's smirk faltered for the first time. The final clash was cataclysmic. The knight's greatsword met her scythe in a shower of sparks, each collision shaking the very fabric of the rift. Jinwoo fought alongside his creation, their movements synchronized in perfect harmony. He feinted left, baiting her into an overextension, then pivoted, driving his dagger into her side. She shrieked, her energy flickering erratically. With a final, desperate surge, Jinwoo channeled every ounce of his remaining strength into one last attack. The knight's sword came down in a blinding arc, cleaving through her defenses. The Void Queen's scream echoed through the void as her form began to dissolve, her essence scattering like embers in the wind. Jinwoo collapsed to his knees, his vision blurring. He'd won, but at what cost? The rift trembled, its stability crumbling without its queen. He had to move. Forcing himself to stand, he staggered toward the exit, the shadows retreating into his body. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. The air crackled with tension as Jinwoo stood before the Void Queen, her obsidian armor shimmering with the light of dying stars. The battlefield around them was a wasteland of shattered dimensions, remnants of their earlier clashes. His breath came ragged, muscles burning from exhaustion, but his grip on his dagger never wavered. "You're persistent," the Void Queen mused, her voice echoing like a chorus of distant storms. "But persistence alone won't save your world." Jinwoo wiped blood from his lip, smirking. "Then let's see what else I've got." With a roar, he surged forward, shadows erupting from his body like living tendrils. The Void Queen countered with a wave of her hand, reality itself distorting as a vortex of nothingness spiraled toward him. Jinwoo twisted midair, narrowly avoiding the abyss, and retaliated with a barrage of shadow spears. They pierced through her defenses, only to disintegrate against her armor. She laughed, the sound hollow and chilling. "Is this your best?" Before he could react, she closed the distance in an instant, her clawed fingers slashing toward his throat. Jinwoo barely managed to block, his dagger screeching against her talons. The impact sent shockwaves through his arms, bones trembling under the force. He gritted his teeth, pushing back with every ounce of strength. His mind raced, his usual tactics weren't enough. He needed something more. The Void Queen's eyes gleamed with amusement. "You're strong, but strength without purpose is meaningless." A memory flashed, his fallen comrades, the world teetering on the edge of annihilation. Purpose. That was it. Shadows erupted around him, not as weapons, but as extensions of his will. The battlefield darkened as his power swelled, his connection to the Shadow Army flaring to life. Across dimensions, his soldiers felt his resolve and answered. Hundreds of them materialized in an instant, their presence amplifying his energy. The Void Queen's smirk faltered. "What is this?" Jinwoo didn't answer. With a single thought, he unleashed his ultimate technique, Shadow Sovereign's Dominion. The world itself bent to his command. Chains of darkness erupted from the ground, ensnaring the Void Queen, while his army surged forward in a unified assault. She shrieked, her form flickering as the shadows consumed her. But even as her body began to fracture, she lashed out, a final desperate strike aimed at Jinwoo's heart. Time seemed to slow. He saw the attack coming, knew he couldn't dodge. But he didn't need to. A figure blurred in front of him, Igris, his most loyal knight, taking the blow meant for him. The blade pierced through Igris's chest, and for a heartbeat, Jinwoo's world shattered. Rage, grief, and resolve fused into one. With a scream that shook the cosmos, he plunged his dagger into the Void Queen's core. Light exploded outward, obliterating the remnants of the battlefield. When the dust settled, Jinwoo knelt amidst the ruins, cradling Igris's fading form. The Void Queen was gone, her essence scattered into the void. But victory tasted bitter. "Hang on," Jinwoo whispered, pouring his remaining energy into his knight. Igris's hand weakly gripped his arm. "My king." It was an honor. Then, impossibly, the shadows stirred. A warmth pulsed through the connection between them, and Igris's wounds began to mend. Jinwoo gasped, his power had evolved. Not just to command, but to restore. Around him, his army stood taller, their forms more solid, their loyalty unbreakable. The universe itself seemed to sigh in relief, the balance of power forever altered. In the aftermath, the realms trembled at the news. The Void Queen's defeat sent ripples through dimensions, her legions scattering without their ruler. Jinwoo, now more than just a hunter, stood as a beacon of hope, and a warning. He had faced the abyss and emerged stronger. But as he gazed at the horizon, he knew this was only the beginning. The shadows whispered of new threats, new battles. And he would be ready.